That is so true, sis. That is so true. And I think, especially with you, the unique positioning that you have as, a healthcare provider, as well as an educator, and, the knowledge that you've been able to acquire over the years, and of course the cultural background, you're able to speak more specifically or more directly to, people who are coming from like a similar experience, like we are. So that's one thing. I mean, I know you mentioned earlier about like health disparities is a big part of like something that you're passionate about, your research and everything else like that. So can you speak to how do you have these conversations, especially when there's like a generational, because I think for you and I, obviously amongst like the same generation, it's a little bit easier. I mean, it's, of course there will still be some like hiccups because again, we're conditioned to kind of feel like, oh, maybe, I don't know. But like for our parents' generation, like it's a lot more challenging. One, because, again, how we were socialized is kind of hard to talk to your elders in a certain way,
Yeah.
especially in a position of authority. Like they are the figures, the authority figures. So you talking to them like you should do this or you should do that. It's not always as easy. So how do you, I guess, navigate these conversations? How do you talk to them? How do you communicate these points in a way that makes sense to them?
So I think like the first thing is coming from a place of humility, right? And understanding that, you know, people don't know what they don't know,
That's
right?
true.
So like I said, especially with my dad and my mom, like their thing was like, okay, I have insurance on my life. If I die, something's gonna be left over for my kids. That was it. And so, like one day I had to ask my father, I was like, okay, like I know that you got insurance and it's gonna bury you, but like what if something happens to you and you don't die? Is it enough? Is it enough to make sure that we have a roof over our heads? Is it enough to make sure that my youngest siblings can go to college? Is it enough to make sure that we're taken care of? Or, is your wife gonna have to like go start picking up like multiple jobs and she won't even be able to grieve you because, you know, like life is happening and you gotta move. Right. Another thing, and usually because like when people sell insurance, they don't help you think about the value of it. You usually catch a lot of people who are stuck with that question because a lot of times the answer is no, it's not enough. And then another thing that I talk to them about is that a lot of people got the term insurance, right? So they're like, yeah, I got insurance, it's term, and it's like it was good, it was term for like 30 years. Right, so they got this when they were like in your 30s. Now you're hitting 50s, 60s, and it's like how many years do you have left on it? 10 years, 15 years, 5 years. It's like, so what happens now? Now you're older, you have all of these diseases, you have these medical conditions, you're at higher risk. What do we do now? Do we have things like long-term care insurance in place? Because yes, you can embed your long-term care into your permanent insurance as well, right? And so when you start having these discussions with them, because these are things that they think about, like you have to speak in your language, they start realizing that, oh my God, I don't have enough insurance. I'm not properly covered because like you said, I got this 30-year policy 15 years ago. I got 15 years left. Then what? Right? Do I actually pass on anything to my kids? Maybe not. You may not if it expires before time. So I always try to approach it from like the perspective of what they will be thinking about. Some people will be receptive, some people will not be. But it's so it's so important to get them to see it and explain in a way that they get it because it will get them thinking. Another thing that I like to talk about in terms of like the health disparities is that one thing I have learned in research is that the numbers don't lie. Right. So when I learned about the term financial toxicity, it was mind blowing to me because it is something that we see every day, but we don't realize that that is what it's called because it's not a term that we talk about a lot. Right. So it's like when you see somebody whose like parent passes away from an accident unexpectedly, and then you set up a GoFundMe to take care of the bills, right? Or like if someone has a stroke and you set up a GoFundMe to take care of the bills, or you go around the community and you're basically asking people for money to help with this and that and all of that. Like all of those things are called financial toxicity. But in our culture, it's just like we're expecting it to happen that way. And then when it happens, you have to GoFundMe, the family's in distress, we're struggling, and this, and that. And I was like, this is not something that just happens in America. It's all over the world. Everywhere you go, it's all over the world. And so what I found with financial toxicity research is that there is a whole sector, a whole branch of research that is just focused on researching this, researching how health and wealth intersect. And one of the things they always say is that, like, if you do not have access to funds, it affects your health outcomes because you will not have access to the resources that you need when you need it, how you need it, to the maximum capacity. They also say that, even though you have financial navigators, it's not enough. They talk about how we need more funds, how we need more government assistance. And also, even now, we're realizing that with the GoFundMe's, like, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that a lot of people are going to give to your GoFundMe. And so when I saw it, I was like, there's so much data on this particular topic. There is tons and tons and years of data on financial toxicity, which happens to us every day. Why is it that we are not educating the public so that we don't end up in the same situation every single time? Like, I'm like, if the numbers don't lie, because that's what you learn in research and data, numbers don't lie. But I'm like, if the numbers are saying the same things day in and day out, day in and day out, day in and day out, and we can't really prevent it from happening, right? Because that's the other thing. You can't prevent cancer. You can't like see it in the future and be like, hey, you're going to have cancer when you're like 52, so be prepared. Why aren't we encouraging people to protect your lives, which is like, that's the main reason of protecting your life, is so that when something happens, if it happens, you can tap into that to take care of yourself, so that we don't end up in the same situation starting from negative every single time. Because if you cannot pull, it's like the most of us, right? We are breaking even right now because we go to work. We go to work, we have that income coming in, that 6-figure income is coming in. But if you think about it, you have a mortgage, you probably have a car note, you got daycare, you have kids. So the only reason you're breaking even is because you're going to work every day. So if something happens where you cannot go to work every day, you don't even like go to zero. You go to negative because you're in the negative. And then if that continues being the pattern, how are you going to get yourself out of the negative? And if you can't get yourself out of the negative, that automatically goes to the next generation. So when you think about life insurance, it's like it helps you avoid going to negative. So if it was like on a scale of 1 to 5, maybe instead of dropping to -3, you might drop to 2. And then you can try to figure it out from there. But right now, what's happening is that on that scale, people are dropping to -5 immediately because there is nothing in place to protect you. And then think about like that impact that it would have on your kids if you're not able to like maybe get up to the baseline of 0 or 1. That's something that they're going to have to carry on for the next generation, because it's going to affect the schools to go to, the food to eat, the houses they live in, right? Like all of that, the extracurriculars they do, your quality of life, all of that gets affected just because we are not being educated to be proactive about protecting our lives, about something that there's so much research and data on, and it's so repetitive. It says the same thing. There's not enough funds to protect you. So the best you can do is protect yourself. Like,
Right. That's right.